Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Mrs. Ressa. Great to see you here. Thanks a lot for your fantastic work, and be assured of the support of this Parliament for whatever you do. First of all, we have a provision on the table that we're negotiating now that the Parliament has decided that NGOs should be among those independent organizations like academic researchers who might get access to the data of the very large online platforms in order to verify what is happening. Council doesn't have that provision right now. Would you think that NGOs should have an important role in verifying and monitoring that the Digital Services Act is being abided by the big platforms?
It isn't just researchers who should have access. It isn't just NGOs. Journalists should have access to this data. Part of the reason that this uneven information ecosystem has shifted and has brought so much wealth to the technology platforms is because the world needed to catch up to understand technology and data. I'm not a researcher. I'm a journalist who understands network effects and understands data. Would I have access to that data? I should. It should be exactly like journalism. We should get to a world where people understand exactly how their data is used, because how can you have informed consent if you don't know what it is, if you don't know what it's being used for?
How do you see the role of the big profiles that the platforms have about every one of us, that they allow them to play out content in a very targeted way to specific groups? I think this is extremely relevant, especially in the phase that you called seeding or introducing the narrative, because it can be directed specifically to groups of people who are or particularly vulnerable or particularly inclined to believe that narrative and to strongly share it. And we have a proposal on the table right now in the trilogue negotiations, because Parliament voted for strongly limiting the kind of profiles that can be built, excluding sensitive data, excluding minors, and so on. Do you think that is something important that Parliament should defend and that Council should look into and eventually go for in order to stop especially disinformation and hate speech also in our member states? Thank you so much.
Let's just go to the targeted ads. Targeting ads kind of takes your weaknesses. It's like I think Tristan Harris was the one who said this, where you take your weakness. You went to a psychiatrist, and you told your weakness. And then all of a sudden, that psychiatrist you trusted then tells the world, here we go. I'm going to sell it to the highest bidder. How is that possible? This business model has truly created an economy that focuses not just on maximizing attention and engagement for money. It has actually downgraded the social benefits of the public sphere, the dialogue. So, this connects directly to data protection, the GDPR. I think the EU should now take the next step. The DSA is a great opportunity to do something about this. It is one of the first ones to do that.
Third question. There has been discussion in this House about a so-called media exemption. So especially from my country, Germany, publishers are saying, well, we have very good media regulation, and that should be responsible for verifying media content, and it shouldn't be Mark Zuckerberg to decide what can go online or not. How do you see that? Do you think there's a danger in terms of disinformation?
We don't have to live in a climate of impunity. Information should not be weaponized. The DSA is a unique opportunity, and thank you, because you've actually kind of moved away from where debate has happened, which is content. This is far, far, far downstream. It's kind of like, anyone can say anything. And this connects to where you talked about, should there be an exemption? The minute you start looking at content, you're already looking at the wrong thing. We should be looking at algorithms and models, because that is what has transformed our information ecosystem. And the choices that were made, for example, the choice to make lies and facts identical, that's a choice. A journalist wouldn't make that choice because we're accountable. But the tech platforms did. They don't care. They're truth agnostic. But what if they were forced to? Because that has actually helped weaponize the weaknesses of our biology. Because you are now selling attention. And what gets more attention is when you are angry, when you are riled up, you stay on longer. And what spreads that way? Disinformation, conspiracy theory. Creating any loopholes or special carve-outs for media, and this is not something that my colleagues are going to like, but I really believe that you were then going to be placed in a position where you must define who media is. And the reality is that would have been much easier a decade ago when it was clearer. Today, it isn't.